Good afternoon and welcome to Midday Moms. This is Dorothy Pilarski, and I'd like to welcome each and every one of you, whether you're signing on now or whether you're listening to our podcast or watching us on YouTube. A big warm welcome. I'm so completely honored and blown away and humbled to have such a remarkable guest today. I'd like to welcome officially Tammy Peterson. We don't know one another, but I've been listening to her podcast in the last couple of days and reading the stories written by Sheila on the Catholic Register, and it just feels like Merry Christmas reading all these beautiful stories. So Tammy, do you want to just say hello to everybody and, tell us just a little bit about yourself before I go into our little ministry video?
Hi, Dorothy. Thank you for the invitation. So this is remarkable, actually, for me too, because I am only becoming a Catholic, right? I'm studying to become a Catholic. And I grew up a Protestant, so this is my first foray into Catholicism, although it was in my roots back with my great-grandmother and my grandmother, because she changed her religion when she was a young woman, so she was born Catholic as well. And the community that reaches out is so lovely in every respect, and I'm very grateful to be a part of this community now. And so I hope that we can share some information that'll be helpful.
And it's an honor to have you here. We're all of us will be praying for you as you journey to become a Catholic. We'll be standing there at the finish line going, yay, so thank you for your yes today, because it could be somewhat it could be sometimes overwhelming, I think, especially when you meet someone that, like me, that maybe is a little bit too much. So I beg you, Holy Spirit, to temper me, but I'm really excited to have you here. So again, for those of you that some of you are here for the very first time, some of you have tuned in to Midday Moms over and over again, but you know that we're here for a reason. We're here on a mission to revive the vocation of motherhood. And so I'm going to show our little ministry video. It's 3 minutes long, because our hope is that someone here will be inspired by what Tammy says, by what I say, by our community, to start a Catholic moms group and start making a difference in your community. Because after all, Jesus Christ needs you to do something, right? And so let's just get to the ministry video here. Come, Holy Spirit. And of course, it becomes a little bit, that's not it there, but let's go here. Come, Holy Spirit. Stop share. I'm a little bit, I'm learning as I go. So our ministry, we are faith partners with the Archdiocese of Toronto, again, on a mission to revive the vocation of motherhood. And we're hoping that someone here becomes inspired to start a Catholic moms group.
Mothers. By our very nature, we are nurturing, loving caregivers. We are social beings, made for friendship and community. We are also spiritual by nature, made by a loving God to know Him and love Him, and to pass this love of our Catholic faith on to our children. But right now, many mothers feel overextended, distracted, and exhausted. Though as Catholics, we have the community of our church, many mothers attending Mass could not name the moms sitting next to them in the pew they share. Community and support among Catholic mothers is desperately needed in this hectic and chaotic culture. Your parish needs you to bring these moms together.
Hi, my name is Dorothy Pilarski. I'm the founder of Catholic Moms Group. We at Catholic Moms Group are on a mission to revive the vocation of motherhood. We exist to bring together like-minded, faith-filled mothers who crave community and are focused on spiritual growth, Catholic teaching, and fellowship. Can you imagine a thriving, engaged mothers group at your parish? A group of moms in love with their Catholic faith, ready to serve other mothers no matter what stage of motherhood they're at. Can you imagine what a difference that would make at your parish? Starting a mothers group, it's not rocket science, but working with a team who's done it before and who's done it dozens and dozens of times sure does help. The Catholic Moms Group membership site is an online community that offers training, resources, and dozens of tools for parishes to help them start a mothers group quickly and efficiently. We're here to provide you with a clear path to launching a Catholic Moms Group at your parish. All of our materials are 100% Catholic. We have clearly laid out meetup plans for both moms groups and toddler groups. We are obedient to the magisterium of the Catholic Church. We have created dozens of tools that are going to save you time and energy. And besides that, we love our Blessed Mother. We constantly turn to her for her intercession. You can make a huge impact in your parish, so join us. We are revolutionizing the way parishes start mothers groups by providing parishes with a Catholic mothers group starter kit and by nourishing and training a community of Catholic mothers group leaders across the world. It's time to start a mothers group at your parish. Join us today. And so I just realized, I don't know if I did a very good job of formally introducing you, Tammy. Tammy is a wife. She is a mother. She is a podcaster. She is a grandmother. And we all know her internationally renowned husband, Jordan Peterson. And I would encourage each and every one of you to I just Google Tammy and find her podcast on YouTube, because there are a lot of very thought-provoking guests there. Now, Tammy, I'm just going to hit it right out of the gate here. And, you were diagnosed with a terminal illness. I think it was in 2018. Renal carcinoma, terminal cancer. You were given 10 months to live, but here you are.
But here I am.
Here you are. And so I want to just take a few minutes now to thank God for the miracle, and to thank God
that way.
Yeah. Thank God for your presence. Can you tell us a little bit about the time leading up to your illness and the time in the hospital? Because some people have read about the story, heard about the story, but many people haven't. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So you say 2018. Yeah, it was October 2018. I had gone on a walking tour with my sister in Croatia the beginning of May. And in January before that, my knees had arthritis, and I was having a hard time walking. And I was having a hard time doing anything because my wrists were also affected. And in January, my daughter called me and she said, "Mom, I gave up the last bit of plants we were eating, because we were eating salad with some olives and some cucumbers. And now I'm only eating meat and my arthritis is going away." And I thought, well, I want to go on this walking tour, and I'm just not going to be able to do it unless a miracle happens. And so I gave up the bit of salad, and I just went on meat. And it wasn't that much of a transition because I'd already given up so many carbohydrates. My body wasn't shocked by the change at all. And within 2 weeks, my knees started to feel better. So I was quite blown away by that. It took about 2 years for my knees to get better, but it started within 2 weeks. And I went on this walking tour in May, and I had a very nice time. On the flight back, I must have caught something on the plane, because 2 weeks after I got home, I had a very high fever, and my digestion was a mess, and my digestion's a mess most of the time. I suffer from celiac disease, so it's always been a challenge for me. But eventually I thought, I better go to the doctor, because my digestion just doesn't seem to be getting any better. And he did an ultrasound. First he checked for parasites. He didn't find any. So then he did an ultrasound, and they saw a shadow on my kidney. They found out I had a bacterial infection because of my symptoms, but they also saw a shadow on my kidney. And I had no symptoms of kidney trouble, really, to speak of. So that was a gift for sure. And we went on tour. I was told I came back from, I think, Ireland for a biopsy, and they told me actually I had renal cell carcinoma, which doesn't kill anybody. It only grows 1 millimeter a year. So they told me that I could just continue the world tour with my husband, talking about his book, 12 Rules for Life. And then when it was convenient, I could have surgery. So the next March 2019, I came home and had surgery, and they took out half my left kidney. And I was recovering very well. My mother-in-law came to help, my sister-in-law, my sister. I have nurses, and all 3 of them are nurses. So I had all this help. And my husband, of course, was my constant companion, and my son and his wife, and my daughter. At some points, I think it was a little bit scary for her, so she wasn't around as much as everybody else. But I went to the doctor, because you go to the doctor eventually after surgery and get a checkup, and my back was starting to hurt. And they looked at the biopsy, and they actually found that what I had was only going to allow me to live for another 10 months. And as I sat in the office,
they told you you were only going to live for 10 months.
Yeah. They said there was no treatment for this cancer, that this cancer kills everyone, that there's no chemo, there's no radiation.
So you were given a death sentence.
Yep.
Sorry, I don't mean to, but that's just,
I was, and my mother died of dementia by the time she was 72. My aunt died of cancer in her 60s. My uncle died of cancer in his 60s, asbestos poisoning, because they used to use asbestos in construction. And my aunt used to wash my uncle's clothes and shake his pants and breathe in the asbestos. And her younger brother, who was 15 years younger, lived with them, and they both died of this asbestos poisoning in their lungs. I guess my family was susceptible to that. And so I thought, well, maybe I'm going to be like the rest of my family, and I'm just going to die young. And so I calmed myself with that thought.
You calmed yourself?
I did. I have a tendency.
That's a very graceful response. It's very
That's
graceful.
how it seemed to me. That's how it seemed to me. But little did I know that things were going to change, because I went home with my husband to tell my son the prognosis. And we were standing out on the street, and I told him that I had 10 months to live. And the look in his eyes, the look on his face, the grief I saw on his face and deep into his eyes was, something that I'd never pronounced something like that before. And for him, I could tell that it was a blow that he was going to suffer from. And that grief reflected back on me. And I've come to understand, I think, that I had been living in a life of some self-doubt and some cynicism from earlier earlier life trials. And I felt those things lift up right off my shoulders.
Now, can we pause just for a
Sure.
second? Because part of, the purpose of our ministry, is to revive motherhood as a vocation, and that so often mothers don't recognize their own value, right?
Right, exactly.
And so I've heard you, mention this story, and then I've read about it, and it was just like, it was like that supernatural sacred bond that you have with your son that healed you in a sense, right? And that,
Definitely brought me to the Holy Spirit.
yes, so maybe heal is the wrong word, but that you received an outpouring of grace in that
Yes.
moment.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to pause and to celebrate and acknowledge that, because I think that like when I read that, I just read it over and over again. It was just so powerful. And how many times as mothers do we miss sometimes moments like that? So tell me a little bit more. I'm sorry, but
Oh, that's okay.
yeah, no.
So when my son was born, I can remember when my son was born, and I took him in my arms and I smelled him, and he smelled like hay. He just smelled like uh, a smell that I just wanted to keep with me forever,
Mm.
And we never had any trouble between us. We always seemed to be able to communicate and to have joy in each other's presence. He went away to university, and he went to Halifax. So he was quite a long ways away for 4 years or 5 years, I think it was. And when he came back, he'd met a young girl in university, and they were going to be married, and they were married, and then ended up living not far away from us. So we thought that we had hit the jackpot, because my son and his wife were more important to me than I can even understand, really.
Mm.
And so when I told him that and saw the grief in his eyes, I never wanted to cause heartache for him. I never wanted that for him. It was the furthest thing from my mind that I'd want to do that. So when I accepted it in the doctor's office, it seemed to me I was resigned to my fate. And that seems to be the right way of dealing with something like this, not causing too much trouble, accepting the doctor's prognosis. My husband was there, and I didn't fall to pieces. So even if he was falling to pieces, I didn't fall to pieces. So maybe that would be helpful to him. So I was doing all these things that seemed to me to be the right thing to do in a tragic situation. I was a lifeguard. I worked as a lifeguard. You can't freak out when somebody's under the water. You have to say to your lifeguard, jump in there, that kid is drowning. So you have to be pretty
You've got to be calm. You got
to be calm and just say what needs to be done next. And so that I've always kind of been like that. And so I was dealing with this the same way I'd always dealt with everything. But it turned out that was not, it just wasn't what was called for.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, I was called for much more than that. And I could realize when I felt this, something leave me, because at the moment I just thought, wow, I feel something's left me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at my son and I said, the doctor, he's just a man. And maybe, he's got what he thinks is an idea of what's going to happen to me. But there's no way he knows when I'm going to die. Only God knows when I'm going to die.
What wisdom.
Yeah. It just came to me, I didn't think it up. It just came to me in that moment. And I thought, and then my life changed completely at that moment. It just came completely. I couldn't deny what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to deny what happened. I wanted to take what I had learned and put it to use. So I wanted to be of service to my son.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to accept whatever treatment came my way with gratitude.
Mhm.
And so that's how I went forward through my treatment, which ended up being months and months long because there were complications, and, you know, it was a long journey. And so at that moment, I made a decision. I made a decision based on this new understanding I have of where I was in the world, and where I was a servant. I was demoted that day. I had been living life through self-will, and today there was no more of that.
Now, explain to me, I don't understand, Tammy, when you mean that you were demoted. I don't understand that. What do
Well,
you?
people think that they have an idea of how their life is going to go, and what they're going to do, and how they're going to be successful, and who they're going to surround themselves with, and what they'll be known for, and just all that stuff. We have these dreams and ideas in our heads. And then, when we're 13, we think we understand the world, and we're going to go out and get it. And it takes there's some maturing that has to go on after that, after you're 13 years old, that some of us sometimes, I don't think, have the time or take the time to revisit those decisions we made when we were teenagers. Because we were teenagers. We were just getting our feet underneath us and learning how to walk at that point. So it wasn't time to think that, oh, the job's done, there's a lot more to it than that. And, I'd been to church, but I left the church when I was 13 or 14, like many young people do. I didn't find what I was looking for there. I wasn't taught in a way that held me there. And so I wandered from there. And I thought about coming back to the church a number of times, but I always would find like one fault in the church, and then I'd leave again.
Yeah, I remember once I was, complaining and ranting, about this and that about the church, and I forget who it was that said to me, well, the church needs you, Dorothy. The church needs you, Tammy. The church needs you.
Right. Wasn't about service. I didn't know it was about service.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't know that. I don't think we know that when we're 13 or so.
No, we don't. And so, okay, so you've got this sort of, you received this terminal, diagnosis, and then you're sort of being like sort of a good girl, good lifeguard, and saying, okay, well, maybe this is my fate. And then you mention it to your, son that I only have 10 months to live. And then the way that he looks at you makes you think, well, wait a minute here. Right. And so there was an infusion of, supernatural grace, so that you could kind of reorient, who is Tammy in the middle of all of this, and just, I need to become a different version of Tammy, right? So,
yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit just more about your hospitalization, your treatment? I was almost tempted to pull Queenie in on this interview as well. It was just so beautiful. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we went down to the States actually and looked to see if there was any other options. And we went to MD Anderson Cancer Clinic in the States, in Houston. They said there was nothing that could be done. So this is a cancer that's not, they treat it usually after someone has passed away. So they don't find the cancer while people are living. So there's been no research done on what to do about it if you actually find it early. Yeah, so that's why I had no options. But they said, just go back to Toronto. The surgeons are as good there as they are anywhere else. Just go. So Jordan and I the night before the surgery, and this was the next surgery where they were going to take the rest of my kidney and all my lymph out from that side, because it had gone into my lymph by that time. And we were sitting on the couch, but we weren't sitting on the couch. I could tell we weren't even in the room. We were so scared that, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is no good. This, like, how are we going to go to sleep? Like, this is no good. And back in my 20s, I'd gone to university and studied kinesiology, which is the physiology and the psychology and the biomechanics of the body. So it's kind of like a philosophy degree for the body. And at the end of that, I became a massage therapist. And I was studying massage therapy just for my thesis at the university with a massage therapist. And at that point, I became ill and needed to have some surgery. The doctor had told me I had cancer on the telephone. And they just assumed that from the CT scan that I had cancer. So they kind of, they went ahead thinking they knew what was going on by not really knowing what was, they hadn't even done a biopsy or anything. But of course I was in my 20s and I was quite shocked by this diagnosis. So I told my teacher and he said, well, lay down and we'll do a meditation. And so he laid down, he did this meditation with me that I decided to use again with my husband. So I had my husband sit at my feet and massage up the arches of my feet and back down again. And I took all the people who'd sent me prayers and I lined them up on a beach. And then I breathed in all their prayers and I took them down to where the trouble was. And I talked to myself and I said, what's the problem here? Maybe we should chat what your problem is, because you seem to be having something wrong. There's something wrong. But I looked at the cells and the cells weren't looking at me. They were turned away. And I thought, oh, cancer is too big for one person. I think I should just give this back to the universe. And then I saw this kind of black smoke come up out of my body. And that was after about 2 hours of meditation. And we were calm. I'd given it away. We went to sleep, got up in the morning, went in for surgery. The surgery went very well. Everybody was very calm. But afterwards, I went home and about a week later, my feet started to swell and then my legs swelled and my body was filling up with fluids because my lymph, there was a hole in the lymph. So it's amazing. It's like a spider web in the body. It's remarkable that they can cauterize all those little vessels that are there. Anyway, they missed one and they couldn't find it eventually. So anyway, I didn't know what was going on. I called the hospital. I said, my feet are getting swollen. And they said, well, you had radical surgery. It's no wonder your feet are swelling. And I went to the doctor and he looked at me and he said, no, you got to go into the hospital again. And so they siphoned off 9 liters of fluid off my belly. They'd never siphoned off that much fluid. So my body, my life nutrition, instead of going back to the heart and being distributed to my body, was leaking out into the interstitial space in my body, and my cells weren't getting any nutrition. And so I was in a tight spot.
Yeah, you could say so.
I was in a tight spot.
Yeah.
So now I had a bag that hung off one side of me, and they sent me home for quite a while and just said, don't eat any fat. And maybe your lymph can rest and maybe it'll heal on its own. So I did that, but I got thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. And I was down like 30 pounds. So I was down to 90 pounds. I didn't have anything left. I could see my shoulder blades. I had no cheeks left. My breasts were gone. My bum was gone. I was just skin and bone and a belly. It was pretty brutal. And I started to have less energy too, and it started to be difficult for me to walk. And my son had gone and got a blood pressure cuff, and he took my blood pressure and nothing came up, so he went and bought another one, and then he took my blood pressure again and nothing came up, and so they were wondering what was going on. Next morning they took me to the doctor and he put me in the hospital and said, your blood pressure is so low, your electrolytes are out of balance, you're going to have a heart attack. So they put me in like a step unit, which is not quite ICU. It's a step unit. And I was in there with other people who looked pretty seriously sick. So I decided that I was probably pretty seriously sick.
When you looked at it.
When I looked at everybody else. And then they put me in a private room and I thought, oh, now I am probably sick, because when they put you in a private room means you're not going home at 2, like you're there
Mhm.
for a while. And not long after that, I got an email from Queenie. They'd given me nutrition to my heart. That's right. They'd given me a TPN diet, which is nutrition in a bag that they put straight to your heart. And within 3 days, I woke up because I was getting nutrition to my body again. And it was right around that time that Queenie sent me an email.
And so just for some people, maybe
Um,
that might not have the background, who is Queenie? Just because
So
like,
Queenie is a Catholic.
uh-huh.
She came to Catholicism when she was in her first year of university. She went to Rome with a group of people from the University of Toronto, and she had her conversion there.
And so she's a friend of yours, right? So you're getting
Well, she was an acquaintance of mine,
an
actually.
acquaintance. Okay, okay.
But she was a lovely person. She had come to our house with a woman who was running for political office, because this is back when Kathleen Wynne was in control
Okay.
of Ontario, and she didn't like the education policies that were coming into the schools with all the political correctness, and she was fighting against them. And she knew my husband was standing up against the gender bill C-16 bill. And so I guess they felt like they could come and talk to him. So that's when I met her. But I don't remember Jordan being all that involved in what she did. So I think she only just came over once, and then she would leave like maple syrup on my doorstep now and then. So she was just being neighborly.
Yeah, so she was I always call them the Catholic Church ladies, right? Yeah. So she was just, she was an acquaintance of yours. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, she was an acquaintance of mine, and she emailed me and asked if she could come and visit. And I said, sure. Because, when I had this experience with my son, I decided that I would accept whatever came my way for help. I would do everything I could to survive. Whether I lived or died was not up to me, but it was up to me to do the work to, to survive, if I was going to survive, and that I would be grateful for anyone who came my way. And so when she emailed me, I said yes. In fact, I prayed to God before all of this, when I first knew that I had cancer, and I said, if you allow me to live, if you see it in your heart that I should live, I promise that I'll share everything I know publicly. So that's why I'm here.
No, I've got that. I've got that in my notes here. I do want to talk a little bit more about that, but let's just continue along the Queenie train for a little bit. So
Queenie showed up.
So Queenie shows up.
She had 2 rosaries, and she asked me if I wanted to pray a rosary. She asked me, first of all, she showed it to me, and I said, oh, a rosary. And she said, oh, you know what that is? And I said, yes. And I don't remember why I know about it. I'm a curious person. So I knew what a rosary was, but I didn't know, I'd never prayed the rosary. So I asked her to teach me. And so she came, so it was 10 o'clock in the morning, and we went down to the atrium where there was a lot of sunshine and benches and bushes and trees that go about 4 stories up in the hospital, and it's all glass, and people go down there if they can, because it's a very pleasant place. It's the most pleasant place to be in the hospital. And she taught me to pray the rosary, and she taught me to think of my intentions, and she taught me what intentions were, so what will we pray? Well, I want to pray for all the sick people in the world, and maybe I want to pray for a sister that's sick, but we could also pray for all the sick people of the world. And, I want to pray for my old dad, because he's like 93 years old. And we can pray for all the elderly. And so she taught me to pray locally and to pray universally. And so we would discuss how we were going to set up the intention, and then we would pray the decade, and then we'd set up the next intention and pray the decade. And so we did that, prayed the rosary every morning. She came at 10 o'clock every morning for 5 weeks while I was in the hospital, and they didn't know what to do with me.
So again, I need to pause, because when I was reading this Sheila wrote two beautiful pieces. I just shout out to Sheila Nonato of the Catholic Register. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, like who goes to visit someone every day for 5 weeks?
Yeah.
And who, I want to just shout out to all of our listeners, for those that you have signed on. I want to put a challenge and a dare out to you. Okay. So Queenie was, quote unquote, just an acquaintance. And she went to visit Tammy, and she brought her a rosary, a brochure, how to do the rosary, and an icon of our Blessed Mother. So I want you to think of your acquaintances, and I want you to ask the Holy Spirit, who is our Blessed Mother calling you to visit? Because it was, I was completely edified, and I found myself, I went to Eucharistic adoration this morning in preparation for our interview. I was up at 6 a.m. praying a rosary for you, and then another one for me. I was like so nervous about but it was just like, it was almost like, our Blessed Mother and Elizabeth, coming together, and our Blessed Mother stayed with Elizabeth for 3 months. And very often I'll say to people, like, what has happened to women? What has happened to our culture, in that we don't have time to do those things, right? We don't have time, human to human, to be there for one another. And I always say, like, what kind of a culture do we live in when mothers don't even have time for their children, right? Like, I got to be careful not to go on my little tangent here. So I'll bring it back. But I just wanted to acknowledge, Queenie's heroic gesture and her generosity and her courage, right? Because it was and plus, being a teacher, like I know that Jordan Peterson mentioned it in the YouTube video that Gabby After Hours on your testimony, he mentioned that Queenie also acted as a mentor and an instructor and a teacher, and so God is calling all of you. I know that some of our mothers group leaders are tuned in here. I just want to say hello to some of them. Oh, Susan Taras. I also see that Rema is here, Kristina Zasowski, Kim Slavinsky. These are some of our mothers group leaders. We have a mothers group also in Alaska, and their whole group is actually watching this as a part of their meeting. And we've got someone here from Wales. So I just wanted to say hello to all of you that are joining us. Okay, so now you're in this beautiful atrium. She's teaching you how to pray the rosary, both, micro and macro prayers. And so tell us some more. And for 5 weeks, my goodness.
For 5 weeks, every day.
Every day.
My husband was with me, and he was pretty constantly with me, but he was suffering. He wasn't well. And so when I would go down and pray the rosary, he'd crawl into my hospital bed and sleep. And so when I'd come back from praying, he would be asleep in my bed, and then he'd get up and we would play cards. That's about all the energy I had. But actually, when I first went, that first night, I'd gone to emergency and I was in the hospital. I can remember he laid down on the floor of the emergency room beside me.
If you could all imagine that. No, and your marriage is such a beautiful marriage, and you've suffered so much together as a couple, because there's your sort of health afflictions and your sort of 10-month diagnosis, and there's Jordan's induced coma, and the whole Catholic community at that time was praying for him. And then before that, these medical issues with your daughter, Michaela, and her.
Oh yeah, that poor thing. We changed her. She had to have her ankle replaced when she was 17 years old, and it was never comfortable. So she was never really able to run. She was never able to wear shoes. She always had to wear a slight heel because it was so uncomfortable for her to walk. She limped all the time, and by the time she ended up having her ankle replacement fixed, and she did have it fixed, that was right at the beginning of when things were starting to unravel for both Jordan and I. Luckily, Jordan took Michaela to Europe to the fellow who had designed the ankle replacement, and he fixed it. It had been put in a bit crooked. And you can't have a joint be crooked. I mean, the ankle has all the weight of the body. Yeah, and so it's an amazing. It's one of the most amazing joints.
Yeah,
because
so I just want to. I don't want to. I want to go back a little bit and come back to this because so the Jordans are no strangers to suffering, right? This is like, it's become very clear that, you know, no strangers to suffering. And okay, so let's just go back to you know, you're being taught how to pray the Rosary, because I want to get to your healing, and then we'll go back again.
Okay, let's get to the healing.
No, I'm sorry, I don't mean
Okay,
to interrupt
let's
you,
get
but
to the
I just wanna, let's get to the healing. So you're praying the Rosary every day for 5 weeks. Queenie's teaching you. Yeah, so let's, and then we'll go back to Michaela. I don't mean to be rude.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. Good, very good podcasting hosting. Very good. So during these 5 weeks, I was having scans very often because they were looking for this hole that was allowing all my fluids to leak out, and they couldn't find it. No matter what they did, they couldn't find it. That's why I was in the hospital for so long. Eventually, they found the interventional radiologist, and these are people who work with the lymph system. So they work with something that's actually invisible. They work with the lymph system, and usually, you know, open heart surgery, there's a lot of lymph around there, and they end up having to repair lymph, often in the chest area, but in the abdomen, that's pretty new and it's not often done. So there wasn't really anybody in Canada that felt confident to do this type of procedure. But the interventional radiologist, thank goodness, at Toronto General had done his training in Pennsylvania under another interventional radiologist, and he wanted to send me there. And so they contacted the hospital, because there they do the interventional radiology, but they put a dye inside you and they look at an MRI, and they find, when they see a plume, that's when they found the hole and they can go in and cauterize it. So they were very confident that they would be able to find this problem. So before I left, Queenie said, well, would you like Father Eric Nikolai to come and bless you? And I'd met Father Nikolai by then, and I said, sure. And so I remember being at home. So I must have gone home from the hospital, probably just to pack. And he came to the house. And he gave me a blessing. And he gave me the novena for the sick, the 9 days of prayer, Opus Dei.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you have it there.
I do. I do.
Yeah.
So it's, again, it's available to everyone. It's a novena, and we all know that, you know, novena's 9 day of prayers for the sick, and it's to Saint Jose Maria Escriva, the founder of Opus Dei. And it was, I was praying it in speedo version over and over again in preparation for today as well. I'm like, okay, I want to make sure because I had never prayed it. I didn't know about it. So I just feel all of these jewels coming to me in preparation for our interview today. So so you were praying, did you start praying the novena immediately, the prayer?
Yes. Well, I was leaving in the morning. So I started praying it the next day. And he told me to also obsess on gratitude, to keep my mind on gratitude. And off we went. We flew down to Pennsylvania, and I was in the hospital. And it was a very nice place. It was right near the university, and my a lot of my family came down and stayed in an Airbnb not too far away. They're following me. And I was praying, and I got ready for surgery. I met the surgeon, and they had high hopes. And I went into surgery, and when I came out, they couldn't find the leak. And he came to my bed the next day and told me that he couldn't find the leak, and that they would do another procedure in a few days. And so they had me on a diet again. So I was no longer, I went 5 weeks without eating anything because I had this nutrition that was going straight to my heart, which is pretty strange, eh? Not to eat anything or.
Yeah, that is, yeah. I'm like, oh
Anyway.
my gosh.
Anyway, so now I was eating again, but I was still eating nothing with fat in it, because that's what the lymph does, is it filters out the fat, and the fat carries the toxins, and that's what the lymph does. It transfers the fat out of the fat with toxins out of the food, and that means that it's working. So no fat in my diet. Okay, so I was eating pretty plain food, and I was praying the novena. And so then it was maybe the fourth day, it was that night, and they were going to do it. I knew they were going to do another procedure on me, and this time they were going to open me up and look. And I thought, what are they going to find? Because what can you see in there? It's just impossible. I thought, oh my goodness. So I was praying the novena, and I thought, and I think this might have been partly God too, because I just decided, I should probably eat some fat and see what's going on. And so I ate some fat. I ate an egg with the whole egg, the egg and the white. And later I looked at this little bag that was off me, and it just looked like fluid. It was just plain fluid. And if fat goes into it, it gets milky colored. But there was no milkiness. There was no milkiness. And I thought, well, I don't know. I'm just like, what do I know? So the next morning, the intern and the head nurse came, and they stood over me at breakfast, and they said, you're going to have to eat some fat. We're going to do a food challenge. And I said, actually, I did the food challenge the night before. And they said, oh, well, let's see the bag. And I said, okay. And so I lifted it up, and it was clear. And they said, oh, well, if it's clear, that means that there's no way that the lymph can be leaking anymore. It must be healed. And
and
they said, and I was like, I couldn't believe it, really, because so many times before, the bag had been not filling up, and I thought I was healed, but it was just a mechanical.
Yes.
So I didn't believe it until they told me. And there it was. I was healed on the 5th day of praying the novena. I went inside the hospital. They pulled out all of my, I had a PICC line, and I had an IV, and I had all this stuff, and they pulled it all out, and within half an hour, I was out of the hospital.
Gosh. What a remarkable.
Out of the hospital with nothing attached to me.
Healed. Eh? And so, it's so beautiful. Now, the other thing that you said, maybe it was in another interview, but that, for some people maybe who are still suffering now and going through different tests, the one thing that you said that really resonated with me too is that every test that you went through, every MRI, every scan, that you would be praying the Our Father, right?
Yes, I prayed Our Father. I prayed Our Father in the night when I'd wake up and I'd be freezing cold. I had to wear wool pants and wool socks and a wool hat, and I had wrapped myself in a cashmere cape, and I had a hot water bottle, and that's how I would go to sleep. And my sister-in-law bought me a duvet to go on top of me. Because I had no
flesh,
no flesh, but I was malnourished, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would just pray. I wouldn't let myself think anything. I wouldn't let myself worry and spiral down into.
That was the other thing. Yeah, you wouldn't allow yourself to worry.
I didn't allow that. I just prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And the same thing when I'd go down for you go down into the hospital where all the machines are, and it's very cold because the machines are running. They have to keep it cold. And so that would be very uncomfortable for me. And then they would be prodding me with different things. And some of them were quite painful. And I would just pray the whole time and until it was done. And I could endure whatever it is that they threw at me, because all I did, I stayed constantly with my prayer. I stayed constantly there, like held in God's hands. I just stayed there. I just stayed there, and I didn't move. That was the only place for me, you know. I was all I had left, and there was nothing else for me. I was convinced that was, well, it worked so well that it gave me such peace that there was no way that I was going to look or think anything other than this. It was just no way. And I am in peace, and I have to stay here. I just have to hold it.
Yeah, and I know that Jordan had mentioned it in that recent YouTube video, and that you had mentioned it too, that you've always, whenever you've prayed for the fulfillment of God's will. So yes. you weren't praying as a dictator telling God what to do, right?
Right. Thy will, not mine.
Thy will be done, right?
Yeah.
And that is so beautiful too, because because so many times we think we're praying, but in fact we're trying to be bossy, right? And so I found
and that's very tricky, you know. Now I'm better, and I've continued to pray for the last 4 years. I pray every morning. I prayed the Rosary this morning, and I have to be very careful that I'm not worrying about someone and trying to get my way with people. You know, I have to put everyone in God's hands. Everyone is in God's hands. I have to imagine that everyone that I'm concerned with is in God's hands, and to trust that they will find their way, whatever way that is. It's not up to me. So
yes. And the other thing too, that, knowing that your family isn't a stranger to suffering, like, all of the suffering that you've been through, it could, like, less than what you've been through has destroyed families, right? But you've been unified, and you've, stuck it through. And in fact, I forget whether it was Sheila Nonano's article or whether it was the Cale Clark interview, but or I think it was the piece in the Catholic Register that you said that you were actually grateful for the suffering. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because, like,
you have to imagine that, I'd come back from the doctor's office, and I had decided that if the doctor said I was going to die, that I was going to be accepting of his prognosis, and that was that. But when I talked to my son, and I realized that it wasn't up to me, that nothing was up to me, that it was only up to God, that really changed everything, and it changed everything from then on. And my life has gone so much better since then. Everything, and that's the thing, is you don't know until you make that change. You don't know until you just wake up in the morning, and the first thing you do is ask for God's will, the first thing, so that you don't let your mind go anywhere. And in the middle of the night, if I used to, people wake up in the middle of the night and they worry about things, especially if they have a flight in the morning, and maybe they're worrying about it, whether the flight's going to be on time or whether it'll get to the destination. But the best thing to do is to just pray, to wake up and pray. And I just pray until I go back to sleep, and I do go back to sleep, and I don't worry. I won't go there anymore. It's not helpful. It's just not helpful. It doesn't bring me, first of all, I end up lacking sleep because I'm keeping myself awake. And I'm also not peaceful. if I pray, then there's a peace that comes with that, a peace and understanding that God has me in his hands, and that he has everyone in his hands, and that the only thing I can do is to pay attention what is the very next right thing to do, and to do that. And that's not always easy, because the things that might come to you might be challenging, and they're not always things you want to do.
Mhm.
But that's another time to ask for God's courage and strength to do the things that we're asked to do. And then we end up going on a path of adventure, because we don't know where that is. We haven't decided where we're going. We're following God's will. And so it's going to take us where God wants us to go. And I never expected I'd be sitting here with you.
Yeah, no, I certainly never in a million years expected that I would have the God-given privilege, to chat with you, because I'm always sort of looking for people that kind of might be able to understand, I over and over and over again, that motherhood is a vocation, it's a call from God, it's an encounter with the divine, we have to transmit the divine. And I know that I had listened to several of Jordan's YouTube videos, and a couple even on motherhood, and I was like, oh, and then I thought, oh my gosh, now I'm speaking to his wife, and I could probably talk to you for another hour to kind of, and we won't, I don't want to frighten you, but it's so rare to find someone that has a glimpse, and so if you can just if you could hug Jordan for number one, I'm going to always remember him now, laying on the floor in your hospital bed, in your hospital room. That is just like, what an act of humility, but also his courage, when he spoke out about compelled speech and ideology, and how he's attempted in his own humble way to address motherhood and elevate. I know there's one woman who's taken a lot of Jordan's work and related it to motherhood. And I'm not an academic, though, so I'm not quite as smart as whatever, but it's just been such a gift. And who would have, did I ever in a million years think, I'd be speaking to Jordan Peterson's wife, like me, Dorothy Pilarski, so just such a gift when we do surrender and we do follow the promptings of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So for those of you that are, in Toronto, because I know we've got people from, we've got people here from Wales, we've got people here from just all over the world. But those of you that are in Toronto, I want to announce that Tammy has graciously appeared, not appeared, well, she's appeared today, but she's also agreed to be a speaker at the next Dynamic Women of Faith conference, and that's coming up March the 23rd. Tickets aren't available for sale just yet, but they will be at one point. But I want to ask each and every one of you, because as Tammy mentioned at the beginning of her interview, she's not Catholic yet. She's in the RCIA program. She's on a spiritual journey. And I would just ask if each and every one of you could, keep Tammy, keep Jordan, keep Michaela, keep Julian, keep all of them in your prayers, because, we need to shelter them with our prayers. So I'm going to ask for all of you to, to pray for Tammy. Now, I know we need to sort of wrap up, and because I'm born in Poland and have like this, my mom, some of you that are here might be tired of hearing the story, but my mom was 13 years old when World War II, broke out, and when Poland was being bombed, her mother, my grandmother, was holding up a crucifix And, my mom's house was, demolished. And so there's a very sort of deep history there of prayer, of the Rosary. And so when I read that your great grandmother was Polish, I couldn't help but wonder, have you been to Poland? Or I'm curious.
We've been to Poland, but only for a day. It wasn't very long. But I'd like to go back. I'd like to go back. So this is the rosary that was my great grandmother's rosary.
Uh-huh. That's so beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's very fine. And after I was well, my cousin called me and she apologized for not knowing that I had been sick. And I forgave her right away. And she said that she was going to send me something. And so we went on a tour. But when we came home from tour, I looked through all the letters that were accumulated. And I found this one letter from my cousin. And this is what was inside. And it was my great grandmother's rosary. So it's gone from my great grandmother to my grandmother to my cousin and now to me. And she said that my great grandmother had it with her all the time. So that's very supportive. It makes me feel this generational support.
Generational connection.
So even though I'm doing this, going to become a Catholic, and no one else in my family is Catholic, there is a history there that is guiding me for sure.
Yes, no, and there definitely is. We always say that the veil between the deceased and the living is very thin, right?
Yeah,
and so
right.
we have this family, this spiritual family,
And that's another thing about motherhood. My mother has passed away, but she's with me every day now. And my children have brought me, my son, I think, brought me faith. And there's no, as far as I can tell, I can't think of a reason not to have children. I can't think of a reason not to become a mother. It was, even my husband says, no matter what our life is like and all the opportunities we have, being parents is the best thing ever. And being grandparents is the best thing that we did. When it really comes down to it, we are, to be with our loved ones is the height of love and belonging is there. And I wouldn't change that for anything. I'm so grateful for my family.
Yeah, and the affection of all of the nurses in your family supporting you,
Yeah,
and being with you, while you were in the hospital. There's so many beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things. Now, I know we only have well, we're already past them, but I'm going to sneak in one or two questions in there, just a couple of last ones. You have this incredible husband that has given all of us so much more courage, and his sort of fame exploded over the gender ideology, and he left his clinical practice, and this happened and that happened. Do you have any tips for wives? Right?
because for wives, well,
they always say that behind every successful man is this incredible woman, right? And for many years, we didn't really know anything about, Tammy Peterson. And then before we get to the tips for the wives, just remind me, why are we hearing from Tammy Peterson now? You made a promise, right? What was that promise?
I promised God that if he saw it in his heart to allow me to live, that I would not hold back my light, right? That I would share anything that I know that might be helpful. I'll share that with the world. And I had that prayer before I went through all of that. But once I was better and Jordan was getting better and we were going to go back on tour, I thought, now what? I need to do something that's meaningful on tour. What can I do? And I thought, well, I could start a podcast and I could talk about the Holy Rosary, because I have questions and I have someone I could interview, Jonathan Pajot. I could interview him because he was a friend of mine. And I interviewed him 3 or 4 times. And then I thought, oh, I guess I have to interview other people. So then I had to figure out who those other people would be. And I decided to concentrate on the divine feminine. So then I realized that there wasn't only goodness, there was darkness there. And I had to accept that I would have to also talk to people about the darkness.
Mhm.
And so that's why some of my interviews have more of a challenging theme to them, like child trafficking or of darkness, true darkness. And I think things that we have to have courage and strength and to understand them so that we know what we're facing, and so we know what we're seeing, and so then we can stand against it.
Yes, and so another thing that you said that I just that very often when you're trying to get guests, that very often women will say no, but men will say yes. And so I wanted to just because I know what it's like. So often I'm trying to get guests. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. And it's always like, oh, Dorothy, you should do this. And Dorothy, you should do that. And I'm like, well, maybe God is calling you listeners, is calling you to start either a podcast or a Catholic moms group, or people say, well, why don't you have a dad's group? And I'm like, wait, that's where I'm not starting. So I just wanted to thank you again for your yes for today, right? Because I was so grateful, because sometimes it's not easy. So you promised God that if you got out of this health, that if he healed you, if he felt that it was in his will and in his heart, that you would then you would tell everybody about it, right? This little light, I'm gonna let it shine. So
yeah. And the day that I was better, was our 30th wedding anniversary.
That's right. So
right. And 5 months before that, or not 5 months before, 3 months before that, my husband was very worried and very sad. And I thought, oh, that's too bad. He's so worried. And I said to him, you know what? I think that by the time we have our anniversary, I'll have everything sorted. I didn't know how it would be sorted or anything, but I thought, I think I'll have things sorted. And that was the day that that the doctors came out, and I lifted the bag and I was healed, and they took everything out and I left, and I looked at my phone and I was like, oh wow, today is our anniversary. I had no idea that
it was like you're like a prophet, right? Like you were prophesying. That's and
well, Jordan just said, now how do you explain that? He did that. How do you explain that?
No, sometimes God gives us specific graces to encourage us, right? So I wanted to publicly, just praise God for Tammy's healing, praise God for her yes to witness, and praise God to her saying yes to Queenie, right? So give us a couple of tips for wives, because you've got this, not too many people are married to Jordan, the likes of Jordan Peterson, and I think sometimes that the feminist movement has caused just a real problem in marriages, because both energies want to kind of, like, there's sometimes a bit of a competition, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But you were in the background, or so just give us some tips as wives from, like, how did you support your husband, and what are some of kind of just your views on, or tips on, being a good wife?
So when we were first married, Jordan said that if we were going to be married, I had to tell the truth. So first of all, he said that, but that we wouldn't be married unless I would agree to that. So I did. I agreed to that, and I tried to tell the truth. So whenever we had an argument, we brought out what we felt were our grievances and shared them until we could find reconciliation. And so that was something that we did. I think that was very helpful, was we didn't hide things under the rug. When he was at work, I left him alone, So when he would go into his office and close the door was closed. I never asked him for assistance. You know, if I was dealing with the children, I dealt with the children, or I dealt with the people who came to the house. If there was work that had to be done or anything, I just dealt with all of that. And I didn't bother him in his room until maybe dinner was ready, or maybe he wanted to make dinner because he likes making dinner. And so it wasn't that he didn't do anything, and he liked to fix things in the house. So it wasn't that he was only in his office, but I never bothered him when he was there. And I think that that was probably a good decision, because he said, you know, when he's working, he'll have a number of different ideas that he's working on, and he's kind of built a scaffolding. And if someone comes in and asks him a question, that just completely falls apart. And so if I had gone, and he never really told me that until very recently, but if I had always been going in there and asking him for his advice or asking him for attention, then he wouldn't be able to attend to what it was that he was trying to attend to. So that's really important. When we were first married and I got pregnant and had a baby, he got lonely, and he said that he was lonely, and I said, well, I really wasn't lonely because I had a baby. But if he was lonely, that maybe we could schedule some dates. And he said, well, he thought that was kind of boring to schedule dates, but he'd give it a try. And so we started dating. And once you give Jordan an idea, then he
runs with it.
Works on it to see if maybe it's a good idea. And so that ended up being a very good idea, because then we had dates 3 a week for a very long time. Now maybe we have a date once a week, or maybe twice a week. And what do? Well, we have what we do, you know, we have a shower, we put on something nice, Jordan lights some candles and puts some music on, and I come in the room and we dance. And so neither of us really, my dad kind of taught me to dance, but he really didn't know how to dance. But I've danced with him for 30 some years. And then miraculously, we were in Nashville, and there was a woman in the Roberts Western music dance hall, and she asked if he wanted a lesson. And so she gave him a lesson, and now he knows how to lead. And now I can dance with him like I'm dancing with my father. And that makes me very happy, because I used to dance with my father, and now I get to dance with my husband. And it reminds me of my dad. And so this habit of this practice of dating, it's like a practice of prayer. It was a practice of dating. So, you know, he'd say, do you want to have a date tonight? And I'd say, I'm tired. You know, the baby was sick last night or whatever, and I didn't get much sleep. I'm tired. Well, what about the next day? Well, maybe the next day. So then I've said, okay, right? And so then we know that it's going to be the next day. So what is my responsibility? To make sure I've had enough sleep so that I can be present with him like I said I would. And that's part of the dating, is that you are honest with your word. And that's part of telling the truth, is that when you make a deal with someone, that you don't make the deal unless you're willing, then you're willing to tell the truth and to do what it is that you said that you would do. And so honor was a big thing in our relationship. And when I was very sick and he was very sick, we had been apart for nearly 3 years. At the end of that, he lived away from me for quite a while, because he really wasn't well, and he needed lots of people to watch him and keep him safe. And I was only just getting better, so I wasn't one of those people. So he wasn't with me for quite a while. But when he did finally come home, he was still pretty sick. I had worked for a year getting quite a bit better. And then we were at home and we were together, and we were sitting around at night, and we were like, here we are together. I wonder what we should do. Well, maybe we should have a date. A date. Wow. I don't even know if we have a marriage anymore, you know, like so much. And you're still sick, and I don't know how you've changed, but I don't know. Let's give it a try. So, you know, we had a shower, we put on something nice, put on some perfume, went downstairs, put on some music, and began to dance. And we thought, oh, still here. Here we are, the two of us, we're still here.
Yeah, we're still here. We made it. We made it.
Yeah. Yeah, we made it. We made it. That's for sure. And
Yeah.
so that kind of attention to each other is really important. You know, Jordan said he was lonely. I didn't want him to become resentful of the children. You know, that wouldn't work out very well. So I had to figure out something that we could do so that he would get the attention that he needed. And then I could attend to myself and my kids. And to specify what that would be means that it doesn't take up all your time because you've specified it. So it only takes up a certain amount of time. And so then you have all this other time for other things, but you have to be true about what you've said yes to, and then put that in its place. Just like, you know, if you have a traumatic memory, it kind of starts to bleed to the rest of your brain, and it starts to bother you when you're maybe driving to work, or when you're at work, or when you're with your kids, and it's just all over the place. And so you want to write that traumatic experience down. Jordan
Memories. It's sort of the intrusive memories and process.
Yeah, and you need to write it all down, exactly what happened. And that writing it down brings it back into one part of your brain, and then it doesn't bother the rest of the brain. So it doesn't come up in different scenarios when it shouldn't come up and cause you grief, you know? So that's the same with anything you do. You want to specify your relationship with your husband. You don't have to say no to something, but you have to negotiate. You know, women, they're good at saying no, and thank God, because we have to say no because we're vulnerable. We're vulnerable as women. But although we have to say no, we also have to, for our husbands, we have to find the moment to say yes. So the other thing that I've noticed is that as we get older, as we've gotten older, we don't share our bedroom anymore. So he snores anyway, and I can't sleep when he snores. So we put him in a different room. I put him in a different room. And at first he was a little bit, he didn't know what was going on, but now he realizes that he has a lot of autonomy in his own room. But he likes to come in and say hello to me in the morning. And every morning he comes and says hello to me, right? And that's fine and everything. But then once a week or so, I want to go see him.
Yeah.
But not as often as he wants to come and see me. But like once a week, I want to go see him. And that's the night when I want to see him that I submit to him. And it is, for some reason, that seems to be the way it needs to go for it to be right, and for it to sit right with me and with my husband. Like he comes to me all the time asking, like a dog who wants a bone.
Yeah.
Asking all the time, is it today? Is it today? Is it today?
No, that's beautiful. No, thank
It's
you.
so cute, huh?
Yeah, no, you've shared so much wisdom, and just I really, really appreciate your generous and transparent. You've just got such a beautiful presence. It's so
Thank
transparent.
you.
It's lovely. It's such a gift, and I'm kind of hoping that this won't be the last time we chat.
Well, it won't be if I come to Toronto.
Yes, yeah, no, because, well, for the Dynamic Women of Faith, I hope you all mark it on your calendar. It's Saturday, March the 23rd. It is going to be at the Old Mill. Just a reminder for those of you that are Catholic and are listening, that we start the novena to St. Andrew. Is it today? Someone tell me if it's today, because I know that, but I think it's today, November the 30th. Gosh, anyway, but don't forget the St. Andrew's novena, because that's a very, very, just a beautiful and a powerful one. And don't forget to pray for Tammy as she journeys again. She's not a Catholic yet, and we want to journey with her and be there at the be there at the finish line and give her a big hug. Oh, and Dr. Josephine Lombardi is here, so greetings to her. She's a professor at the St. Augustine Seminary. So the novena for the Immaculate Conception starts today. Thank you very much, Dr. Lombardi. Thank you for reminding us of that. And so I just want to, Colette, our Mothers Group leader in Wales, a big warm hello to Colette. And then we also, Susan Taras, our Mothers Group leader in Sacred Heart Parish in Chippewa. So a big warm welcome. Tracy Manning is a Mothers Group leader who also speaks of her her grandmother's rosary and the power. Madalena Sperti, one of our Mothers Group leaders. Annalisa was one of our Mothers Group leaders. So to all, and Kim, oh, there's, Dr. Lombardi is here again. So I'm sorry I didn't go through all of these a little bit sooner, but I was just so overcome by Tammy's presence that I didn't have a chance to look at all of the comments here. So thank you, all of you, for signing on. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. Please do again mark Saturday, March the 23rd. At the Old Mill, and we keep on checking our website. We're going to release a block of tickets for our Mothers Group leaders first. And yeah, so Tammy, you're definitely going to be in my prayers. Do you have any sort of closing thoughts that you'd like to share with the moms that have joined us today?
Oh, I'm just very grateful to be here and to speak with you, and for the invitation to the conference. It was very nice to be invited to that and to have the time to go. So that was meant to be. And I hope that I can meet some of these mums at the conference. And I think it's great, we're supposed to do the next right thing. And if it feels in your heart that there is something that you can do to be of service, then now's the time.
Yes.
That's what I'm finding. Now's the time.
I'm going to close our interview today with the very last prayer of on day 9 of the novena. It really just, when I was preparing for this interview, it just struck me as something that we should close with. So and this is a prayer to Saint Jose Maria Escriva, and it's part of the 9-day novena, but it's the last prayer. Grant me an ever greater devotion to my Holy Mother Mary, and give me unshakable confidence in her maternal intercession. Help me see the sure way to obtain the graces I am asking you for, from sanctifying my suffering to curing my illness, to have recourse to Mary's mediation, especially through the devotions she most appreciates, such as reciting the Holy Rosary each day.
Amen.
Amen. So I'm going to be real honest with you, Tammy. I don't want to end this interview.
That's a good place to stop, because you're supposed to leave the party when it's still happening.
Yes. So anyway, to all of you, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Tammy, thank you very much. Big hug to Jordan, to Julian, to Michaela, to your grandkids.
Oh, that's lovely.
And thank you for all of the sacrifices your family has made, and for being such courageous warriors for the truth. So thank you. Okay. Bye now. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.